This is Seeing Red, now in our 15th season of bringing you the best in independent Red Bulls news and opinion. Now, here are your hosts, Mark Fishkin and Joe Goldstein.
Hey folks, this is going to be a different kind of Seeing Red for a couple of reasons. The first is, as you may notice if you've watched the show before, I'm not at home. I'm actually down the shore. The other thing is that we'd hoped to bring JJ Pavlik in this week to be a guest host. Timing didn't work out for me and my availability. So you're going to see me with these on because I need them to be able to see and do the show and do everything that you're accustomed to seeing and Seeing Red. And if you're listening, hello, it's just me, Mark Fishkin, riding solo. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and please subscribe. The subscribing is the important part. All right, let's get going. Stop me if you've heard this before. The Red Bulls had the advantage in terms of shots and XG, and they couldn't get the winner, and they settled for a draw in Charlotte. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. I'll look back at the road draw. We're going to give our Bull of the Week, as we usually do. I'll look at international absences and how they'll impact the Red Bulls, at least in the September international window. We'll preview Saturday's match at Red Bull Arena. With rain in the forecast, a chat with Joe Tansey of the Union Soccer blog and your emails, all that tonight on Seeing Red. All right, so the Red Bulls restarted the 9-match sprint to decision day with a 1-1 draw at Charlotte. Kyle Duncan gets isolated, pulls down Kerwin Vargas clearly in the box in the 10th minute. You can make the argument that perhaps it's not necessarily Duncan's responsibility to cover Vargas all alone, but nevertheless, that definitely was a foul in the box. No one was really having a hard time with that. Swiderski finishes. It's 1-0 Charlotte. And from then, New York was the better team, as we've seen countless times throughout the season. J-Mai had a smash in the 30th minute that went just high. And then 7 minutes later, if there is a perfect counterattack in Major League Soccer, this was it, right? Noah Ayla making himself big, taking the ball off Swiderski's foot in the Red Bull box. A beautiful ball down the wing to Van Zier, who, for all the Van Zier detractors, and there are plenty, the ball that he served to Manuel, splitting both Charlotte defenders, was absolutely picture perfect, as was Manuel's finish. Just chef's kiss, phenomenal goal. And then in the second half, New York outshot Charlotte 11-4 after halftime. Van Zier with a free header wide, shooting wide in the 72nd. Harper with a fantastic move in the box. Morgan goes just wide. And then with just 4 minutes from time, Morgan to Corey Burke, who, despite having a defender closing him down and a keeper also very, very concerned about the ball, just puts it over the bar. New York outshot Charlotte 20-7, but shots on goal for the match were just 3 apiece. Rinse, lather, rinse, repeat. And so the Red Bulls get their points one at a time, and they got them one at a time. They got one of them on Saturday night. Bull of the Week, Ronald Encore, is getting a ton of good press. He got some press for the young players of the week by Charles Baum, good friend of the show. I'm giving mine to Noah Ayla because of his involvement in the scoring play. Really started everything. 91% of his passes completed, 4 blocks, 4 clearances. Really a phenomenal match for Noah Ayla. And because of that, he's our Bull of the Week for sure. Lewis Morgan was called up earlier this week to the Scottish national team. They have games both September 5th and September 9th. He'll miss the Red Bulls match September 7th against Sporting Kansas City, which finds themselves in the Open Cup final yet again after taking down USL powerhouse Indy 11 last night. So he'll miss the game against Sporting Kansas City. Lewis Morgan will, as will Noah Ayla, who today was called up to the Swedish U21 team. They have games, I think, the 5th and the 8th or something like that. He isn't going to be playing for Red Bulls in that date against SKC. Carlos Cornell may get called into the Paraguayan national team. It is a FIFA window after all. Cornell famously ran afoul of the Portuguese coach, who then didn't play him a minute in the Copa America, and Paraguay lost all 3 games and found themselves out. It's certainly possible. Ryan Maris played very, very well in his stead. Other club news, Bento Estrella, in fact, to be sold. He was, the club announced earlier today, transferred to Sporting Lisbon. No, don't get angry. The name of the club is Sporting Clube de Portugal. And listen, when Estrella was signed 4 years ago as a 14-year-old or 3 years ago as a 15-year-old, this was the plan the whole time. He was literally in the Red Bulls' backyard. They made him a homegrown player, principally to get some value from him. He does have a Portuguese passport when he eventually makes the move to Portugal. And this is that day. There was an undisclosed transfer fee and a sell-on fee. And, famously, Estrella, I think, was thought to be, a savant, one of the youngest players signed in club history at the time, and never played a minute for the Red Bulls first team. Played a whole bunch for Red Bulls 2, was injured a whole bunch. Now he's 18. He's off on his adventure. And if he continues to develop in the European system and get sold, the Red Bulls will benefit. But he's not a guy that was threatening, I think, to get into the first team anytime soon. So best of luck, Bento. We hardly knew you. Lewis and Noah, please come back healthy, because we know how important that is when important players come back injured from national team duty. All right. Saturday at 7:30, the Red Bulls host the Union for their first home game in a month. Philly is having a very strange kind of season for themselves. So before we get to that, let's just look at the remaining schedule. Again, 8 games left in the regular season. The Red Bulls currently in 4th place, a point above NYC and 4 points above Charlotte. They've got Philly, Kansas City, as we aforementioned. They go to Chicago. They have 2 against Atlanta, the Hudson Derby at home on September 28th. They go to Toronto, and then the League's Cup champs lying in wait. There's Columbus at the end. All right, let's talk about Philly. 6-10-9. This is a very un-Philly-like Philly season. They're 10th in the East. Woof. They've scored 45, but they've conceded 42 goals in just 25 games. A lot of that, as we'll hear from our chat with Joe Tansey from Union Soccer Blog, is that the lack of an injured Andre Blake for a lot of the year has really kind of hurt them. They're 3, 4, and 5 away from Subaru Park, 4th in MLS in XG. Stop me if you've heard this before. They're 2nd in big chances in the league and 3rd in big chances missed. So while they do score a decent amount of goals, the offense creates more opportunity to do even better. They've received 1 red card all year long, which means that on the defensive side, they are very, very disciplined. Since we last saw them, the teams played to a scoreless draw on July 6th. There have been a couple of changes. Out went Danish midfielder Sanders Ngabo, who went back to Denmark. Jamaican defender Damian Lowe yesterday signs for Al Al-Houd in the Saudi league for $200K. Okay, Damian. He was on the final year of his contract. He wasn't going to sign another contract with Philly. Venezuelan midfielder Jose Martinez had his contract completed Corinthians. So we're just waiting for an announcement on that. He certainly won't play. And then in American striker Sam Adniran, who came to Philly from St. Louis, and Haitian midfielder Danley Jean-Jacques came over from Metz in Ligue 1 in France. Themes for Philly, it's a very Red Bull season. They've narrowly underperformed their XG. They've fallen below expectations. Like the Red Bulls, the Union front office has been largely inactive in the transfer market, failing to add depth, especially to the back line. And much like the Red Bulls last season, they really have only 2 center backs on their roster, right, being Jack Elliott and Jacob Klesnes, with the departure of Damian Lowe. They may have enough quality to get them in the playoffs. They're below the line right now, but they may likely fall short. And they just lost to the Crew in the League's Cup. And then also the Ty Barabo show. The one big positive sign for the Union right now is signing. They got Barabo from Wolfsburg last August for $1.5 million, and he really struggled to get playing time over Michael Carranza and even Quinn Sullivan and Chris Donovan. But with Carranza's departure, he finally got his chance, and he ran roughshod in the League's Cup. He finished as with 7 goals in the League's Cup, winning the Golden Boot for that competition, beating out Diego Rossi and Denis Bouanga to take that title. And, as the Red Bulls have been hurting for a striker that's in form, Philly or Barabo rather, has been just that player. Looking at the history between the teams, it's the 45th all-time meeting. The Red Bulls trail 16, 19, and 9. I remember a time where these numbers were really flipped. They played to a scoreless draw in Philly on July 4th weekend. Kind of ironic they're playing again on Labor Day weekend. The Red Bulls haven't beaten Philly in 5 years. In 59 months, they have not beaten Philly since Danny Royer and Tom Barlow scored in a 2-0 home win in September of 2019. In any competition, in any venue. In fact, the Red Bulls have only scored 2 goals against Philly over their last 5 matches together. The saving grace here, perhaps, is the Red Bulls are 10-5-5 all time at Red Bull Arena against the Union. Not that stopped them from getting winning results since the midpoint of the Trump administration. The all-time leading scorer, BWP, and he's been out of the league and off the team for a very, very long time. Elias Manuel has a single goal against Philly. He's the active leader. Let's take a look at the prospective lineup. Whoop, there we go. It's a 4-4-2 diamond with Andre Blake in the back. He's got 4 clean sheets in 22 appearances this year. Going around the defense, this is the core of the Philly defense that we've seen for years now, that have gotten within a penalty kick shootout of winning MLS Cup and have gotten to Open Cup finals and things like that. They can't win the hardware. Sound familiar? Kai Wagner with a goal, and 8 assists from the left back, because it's a very Red Bull sort of flavor, and he pushes up with some effectiveness. Jack Elliott has 3 assists on the season. Jacob Klesnes, he of the 122nd minute dagger, with a goal and 2 assists. Nathan Harriel played on the U.S. Olympic team. He has 3 assists. And then moving into the midfield, Jesus Bueno, es muy bueno, 2 goals for the Venezuelan. Leon Flock and Jack McGlynn, the 2 relatively young, still American midfielders on the wing. Flock's only 23 years old with 3 assists. Jack McGlynn, 3 goals and 6 assists. That's a good season for McGlynn, who was also part of the Olympic team. Gazdag doing Gazdag things as the 10, 16 goals and 7 assists so far this season. And then up top, there's Ty Barabo with 11 goals in all competitions. Quinn Sullivan with 3 and 5. That's not Kevin Sullivan. This is his older brother, Quinn, who's getting it done. So, the question begs to be asked, what can we expect out of this team? Emil Forsberg apparently did not practice the other day. We haven't had the media availability with Schwartz yet, who was saying he was hoping to have Forsberg back for this game, not playing him on the fake turf in Charlotte. There was a Red member open practice this week, and fans there did not see Forsberg practicing. Not great, Bob. But nevertheless, New York is going to do their best to contain Barabo. They're going to make it go. The question then, of course, is what do we think? What might happen? What is the prediction? Again, this team hasn't beaten Philly since 2019. A saving grace, they played in the Leagues Cup 3rd place game over the weekend and lost in penalty kicks to Chris Armas and the Colorado Rapids. Tonight, Wednesday night, they play Columbus in a league match that had been rescheduled because of Leagues Cup at Subaru Park tonight. And then they come to Red Bull Arena. If I'm Jim Curtin, perhaps I'm letting more kids play, although with so few games left in this season, every point is really, really crucial. I think, you go and you get the home points and then you hope for the best. This is not a team that knows how to bunker, just like the Red Bulls. It will be an ugly street fight, as it always is with Philly. And I'm going to say that New York is going to get off the schneid. They're going to break the curse. 5 years without beating Philly it's atrocious. It is horrific. And New York is a team that is playing well, and I think they're going to do just enough, and they're going to beat Philly 2-1. When we're back on Seeing Red, I am going to be speaking to good friend of the show, Joe Tansey of the Union Soccer Blog. So stay with me, won't you? Thanks. Seeing Red, the New York Soccer Roundup. Red Bull's getting ready to take on an old familiar foe that they have not beaten in 13 straight times, and that's the Philadelphia Union. And we're very, very happy to have back for the first time in video form from the Union Soccer Blog. That's Joe Tansey. How are you, Joe?
I'm doing good. It feels like we talk less and less now that the schedule is balanced. Do we want to call it that?
I mean, I know we only play you twice a year, and it just doesn't seem like enough. Although I think for Red Bull fans, since we haven't beaten you in half a decade, I think probably it is enough. But this Union team is having a very, very strange year by Union standards. Made it to the semifinals of the League Cup, wound up with the garlic prize in fourth place. They've only won 6 times in league play. Tell us what's happened to the Union this year.
I think everything and anything that could have happened. I'll start with the off season. And I think this they've kind of set themselves up for this to happen. A lot of people here in Philly have been, okay, where's the roster refresh coming from? They decided to run it back 2023 and kind of did the same thing this year. And the problem is the core of the team, sure, it's still there when they're at their best and playing together. They got to play as a team to win. It's still there, as the Cincinnati Leagues Cup game kind of proved, which is kind of a big proving point for the inside the locker room too, for confidence. But there isn't much after the first, 12, 13 players on the roster, which has always been a concern. And a lot of these depth rotation players haven't worked out. And when Andre Blake goes down pretty early in the season, it was a big one. We've seen in previous seasons with Joe Bendick and other goalkeepers that have come in, it's just something about having a 3-time goalkeeper of the year in there. It turns out it's a pretty big deal. The center backs have been affected by it. So it's been very weird. And then you've had a lot of international absences, which ironically Jim Curtin was screaming about in February, that they need to get a lot of points first half of the season because the summer was going to be so tough with Daniel Gazdag at the Euros with Hungary, Jack McGlynn and Nathan Harriel at the Olympics, the Copa America, which ended up being the final springboard for Jose Martinez to leave the club.
Yep.
So it's been a very strange season around these parts. And just as you thought the team was starting to hit its stride and find something, right? They won 2 games before Leagues Cup. They've just got on this run, and then the same old story. They got outclassed by multi-million-dollar players that they don't have, that the other team does in the Columbus game. And honestly, in the Colorado game, in the third place game on Sunday, I think they just shut it all off in the second half. Jim Curtin was not happy with the performance. So it's kind of like, which team is going to show up? Is it the one that beat Cincinnati, or is it the one that couldn't beat the Colorado Rapids at home?
I was going to say, then they got outclassed by Chris Armas. So, which is an interesting story to Red Bull fans, as it is. These teams played to a scoreless draw at Red Bull at Subaru Park earlier this year. Philly has a pretty full dance card this week. We're recording on Tuesday night. Wednesday night, because of Leagues Cup, you guys are hosting the Crew before you come before you come to Red Bull Arena, and Columbus is they're the model franchise at this point, right? They're the defending MLS Cup champions. They're holding 2 trophies at the same time, right? They're also holding the Leagues Cup now after taking down LAFC. It certainly doesn't get easier. I guess the question is, what kind of are we going to expect squad rotation from Jim Curtin this week by game 3? Is it more important to win the home game? I mean, if you're looking at Columbus or the Red Bulls, I don't think it's a big challenge to figure out who the easier opponent is going to be right now. I'm curious what your thoughts on what we might see at a curtain.
Well, that's assuming they have squad to rotate at this point in the year, because Jose Martinez is officially off to Corinthians in Brazil, and Damian Lowe, I guess, move out of nowhere to Saudi Arabia. He wasn't coming back based off of things he posted on social media and kind of like where the team was headed. He wasn't getting a new deal from everything that was inferred. He wasn't getting a new deal at the end of the season. So he got the deal in Saudi Arabia, and the union got I think that the reported fee was $200,000 for him.
It's better than a sharp stick in the eye, as we say.
It's better than nothing at this point. But it does leave them really short. The one thing, and I kind of think this speaks to what this team is or where they are at this time, they were kind of banking on Columbus winning on Sundays so they get a hungover team coming in on Wednesday. And that's something you've never really heard in any of the talk about any previews of games. They're kind of hoping that Columbus comes in and sleepwalks through it. And so, yes, that's important, but I think it's the most important one just because it's the one that's in front of them at the moment. I'm not exactly sure what they're going to do at center back. It's Jack Elliott and Jacob Glesnes until they're worn out.
Right.
And then it's Nathan Harriel, who's going to be basically the utility man in their back line for the rest of the year. They have this under-22 initiative center back, Wefu Makanyu, who they signed out of South Africa last June. And there were pretty telling comments today from Jim Curtin that Harriel's number 3 on the depth chart. And he had some critical things to say about Makanyu. So it doesn't seem like he's getting first team minutes anytime soon. And I think they're kind of not punting on a new acquisition, but they have a teenage homegrown in the system in Neil Pierre, who they're really high on. I think is probably going to fill that role. And then Martinez, they're going to play Leon Flock and Jesus Bueno in that spot. I don't know if Flock can do it by himself.
Yeah,
I think against certain opponents he can. But I think between him, Bueno, and this new signing, Daniel Jean-Jacques, Haitian international, who they really love his athleticism. He's got really good closing speed. So it'll be interesting to see how they work him in over these next few games. But they're going to need anybody who can play first team minutes at this point.
You know, you mentioned Glesnes and Jack Elliott, who have been playing together for years, literally for years, right? They're the core in the back of Philadelphia's success and near trophies over the last few years. But still, 45 goals conceded in 25 matches just isn't going to cut it. So I guess the question is, what's happened? Is it simply the loss of Blake for so long, or is it without Blake, there's just a lack of confidence in the whole defensive unit?
I say, and this is kind of me just roughly estimating, I'd say they probably have 10 more points easily.
If Blake plays.
If Blake is remotely healthy during that stretch. Because some of the mistakes are going to happen, right? And I think it's just natural. But the mistakes that have been happening and were happening while he was out, with Oliver Zemla, who they got from Louisville City, and Andrew Rick, a homegrown, there were some bright spots, but there were very clear flaws in both of their games. And that's what ended up being, kind of costing them points, because they've been scoring goals throughout the season, which is surprising because Julian Carranza left and they're still scoring goals. They're still finding ways to put the ball in the back of the net and create chances. But what's been uncharacteristic, it's that I wonder if, and Jacob Glesnes won't admit this, but I wonder if maybe the sports hernia from last year, maybe that's either limiting him or he's not at 100%. Maybe he's at 90, 95%. And maybe that has something to do with it, because it's a pretty serious injury for him to come back from. So I'm not sure if that, but I think some of the communication with Blake not there and overcompensating for him also had to play a role, because the majority of the mistakes have come from center backs, central mids. The fullbacks have been pretty good at least in the standard that has been created this season.
One name that Red Bull fans aren't too familiar with is Barabo, who really used the League's Cup as his coming out party to the league. He won the Golden Boot in the League's Cup. What was it, 7 goals in 6 games or something like that? I mean, just phenomenal. The team would not have reached the semifinals if it wasn't for Barabo. Red Bull fans haven't seen him. Tell us about him and how he plays.
Look, he's a worker. I've been very impressed. He fits the Union system so perfectly with the way he works every second of every minute that he's out there. And I think that's exactly what they need to replace Julian Carranza. But the whole situation is weird because Michael Uwa has been on and off, and he's the DP signing, and he's supposed to be scoring all the goals. But rarely does he play 90 minutes. He's a different type of profile of striker, and they needed to find something else while Carranza was still here. And for whatever reason, maybe he practiced bad. That's a possibility. But Maribo just didn't get on the field until Carranza left. And there's this weird dynamic now that whenever Jim Curtin says something bad about a player not being able to make the roster, right, the fans are like, well, he was wrong about one guy, so he's got to be wrong about everybody else. But it really is kind of stunning. And look, when strikers get hot, it's incredible to watch because some of these finishes are insane. But the way he works within the system and presses and is just absolutely relentless, I think has really stood out to me watching it in person. Yes, the goals are fantastic, but getting in the position, working within that 4-4-2 diamond and pressing, and they've been a little more effective on the counterattack as well between him and Daniel Gazdag specifically. So it really is a kind of a perfect fit for what the Union want. And the question for even going into Sunday was how come he wasn't scoring or on the field and scoring more while Carranza was here.
Yeah. A lot have been said in the semifinal loss to the Crew, which again in the League's Cup going down in Columbus, there's nothing wrong with losing to the Columbus Crew, who are in phenomenal form, and they seem to have figured it out. And Wilfred Nancy is savant, and on and on and on. But one thing that was apparent, and I don't know if it was Matt Doyle or another MLS voice who said the difference between these two teams is that Columbus is spending, and Columbus is spending to bring in the talent. And we know over the years the way that the Union ownership have worked in terms of finding the right player, but not exactly splashing the cash in a very similar way to the way that Red Bull operates. And so, New York's dreadful summer window as well. I think there's a lot to be said about it. I mean, Union fans have been watching this for a really long time. You got literally as close as you could possibly get a number of times to winning major trophies. Is there a sense among the fan base and among the punditry that without an injection of cash here, that there's really kind of, with this group at the very least, they've seen kind of the top of their output?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's kind of fair. I think everybody's kind of realizing that. After MLS Cup, they decided to run it back, and I guess fair play to them because they got to MLS Cup. And if Gareth Bale doesn't come on the field, maybe we're talking about a completely different, completely different story. Because then you have the trophy to hang yourself or to hang your hat on. But yeah, it feels like it's time to shake something up. And Carranza's gone, Martinez is gone. Lowe only was here for 2 years, but still an important part is gone. I wouldn't be surprised if Jack McGlynn moves on. Although I think he's got to work on the defensive part on his game, but the offensive part is fantastic, and that's what's going to really draw him to Europe. And there, and who knows what happens with Uwa too, because at the end of the day, strikers have to score goals, and he's being. And he was outperformed.
We've got a few of those as well. Yeah. We know what that's like.
And look, I love him as a player. I think he has a tremendous work rate, and the way he gets himself into space is very, very nice. But The droughts have been too long, and there's been multiple of them. So yeah, I think it's at that point. I mean, there's been town halls. I know you guys are well versed in town halls from
back
years
in the
past.
day. Yes,
there was one about a few weeks ago down at the stadium, but it didn't really seem like much came from that. Ernst Tanner made a comment about Miami, and I think he's still. I don't know if butthurt's kind of the right word, but kind of something along those lines where like
like no one can compete because Miami's
right. Like how is Miami supposed to build this type of roster? They must be doing something. There was a comment made. Yeah, there was a comment made by one of like the other owners about like a snide comment about retired Barca players, stuff like that. Which it's fine, but also look at what the Crew did. Where was Cucho Hernandez playing? He's playing at Watford.
Right. I mean, come on.
Like there's so many leagues across the world. I mean, heck, if you can go into the English Championship and find an ace scorer
like Bradley Wright Phillips.
Yeah, like it's been done many times before in MLS.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, they got super lucky with Carranza.
Yeah, no, it worked out very well for them.
I mean, Inter Miami's incompetence prior to their new regime is the reason why he was even available and became the striker he did in Philly. So, I mean, a little luck has to go in with that as well. So it feels like it's time.
New York hasn't beaten Philadelphia since, hold on, let me get it. September of 2019, in the before times, as we say. Does it happen on Saturday at Red Bull Arena, sir?
It might.
With the understanding that New York draws all its matches.
Well, the Union seemingly can't hold on to leads this season, so I guess something's got to give.
Something's got to give. Joe Tansey, where can fans find you and your amazing work?
Over on Substack, Union Soccer Blog is where the majority of the content is these days. Plenty of stuff going up each week. I'm on Twitter at JTansey90 if you care to follow there. There's be a lot of college football mixed into that though. So
that's all good. We like college football. We like college football. Joe, thank you so much for joining Seeing Red. We really appreciate it.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me on again.
All right. We've got more Seeing Red coming up after this short break. Keep it here. All right, enough of that music. It's Seeing Red, the New York Soccer Roundup. If you've stayed with us through our two segments and you're here desperate to hear what people are saying, it's always important to know what the fans are saying. You can write us at seeingredny@gmail.club anytime and share with us your insight, your questions, all that. And we have both of that. Here's Ralph Barrera, friend of the show, says, if the Red Bulls were a car, the transfer window is always a situation where a car has a flat and management decides to buy an air freshener and continue driving on the flat tire. One of those cheap tree-shaped pine-scented air fresheners too. And yes, the flat tire might get us to the nearest gas station, but it was never the intended destination. This team needs a goal scorer. They signed someone else. The idea of being bold is creating a new mascot, while time and again other teams not named Inter Miami are able to find productive goal scorers. Maybe it has to do with not looking for them in the Polish second division. That was a question. We have beat the drum to death about the less than stellar transfer window from the Red Bulls front office, and we will hopefully have a chance to talk to Jochen Schneider about it at some point soon. But Raf, I know from the holistic fan standpoint, it's not either sign a scorer or make a mascot. It's not either find a scorer or change the arena. It's not either find a scorer or do something positive off the field. There are different groups of people, and I know you know this, that are in charge of doing things like this. It really says something that the narrative has so become the Red Bulls are a good team, but would be great with a goal scorer, that in seemingly every single power rankings of the league, whether it's Soccer America or whether it's MLS or whether it's ESPN, it's literally that passage. It's literally the Red Bulls are a good team that would be great with a proven goal scorer. And I would hate for the epitaph of this season to be the Red Bulls are a good team, but would be great with a proven goal scorer. But it until something comes around to change that narrative, that's it. This team could be in second place. This team still can be in second place and avoid having to play NYC in the first round of the playoffs. Unless the team completely collapses and they go, 6-2 with 6 losses and 2 draws, they're going to make the playoffs. The question is, as always, is what happens then? David Leibowitz writes, and I believe this is David's first time writing, so thank you so much, David. I am a relatively new Red Bull and soccer fan. Having just started watching the team about 4 years ago. 4 years ago, you are not a new soccer fan, my friend, or a new Red Bulls fan. You are an intermediate level. Can you shed any light on the logic of selling Amaya and then immediately turning around and replacing him with Carballo? Like, what's the point of swapping out one talented midfielder for another? Were they trying to upgrade from Amaya, or maybe Amaya wanted to move on? Or was this purely a financial transaction? I know they got $4 million for Amaya, and I assume they are paying at least that much for Carballo, so it doesn't seem they're making a profit. Honestly, I'm confused and could use your expert insight. What's the strategy here? So here's my thought. Frankie Amaya did just about everything that he could here, and I think he wanted to go. And I think he was open to offers, and as long as the offer was close enough to what he thought his value was, I think the team was okay with making that change. I think Amaya had grown tremendously from his shift from a 10 to an 8 over his time at Red Bulls. And while I think it's okay to think about this in terms of puzzle pieces that you are constructing a roster with, these are also human beings that want to do different things. And we always like to think that every player here wants to continue and end his career with the Red Bulls. I mean, that player is Brian Mara. But at the end of the day, Amaya is still young, and he still had a lot to prove, and he still wanted to grow. And given his Mexican-American heritage, I think a move to Toluca was a great opportunity for Amaya to continue to improve his game. I'd like to think that there was one point where he was on the national team picture. Playing at Toluca might advance him a little more, or if he wanted to make a one-time switch and play for El Tri eventually. So, I mean, it's not just a like-for-like switch either, because Carballo, when healthy, from what I understand, can really throw himself into the attack. You can make the argument that Amaya threw himself in the attack as well. But Carballo, older, more veteran player, could provide more veteran leadership. And yeah, I mean, you'd like to say, I sold a player for this much, I'm going to make a profit off of this transaction. You know, whether or not the Red Bulls think that solely making that transaction at a profit, that switch at a profit, was their motive. But I think they were trying to do Amaya a solid and move him along to a team where he was going to do a little bit better. So, but David, thank you so much for your note, and thank you so much for watching Seeing Red. We have come to an end of kind of a funky vacation house standalone episode of Seeing Red. I want to certainly thank Joe Tansey for stopping by. As always, I want to thank Zach Feldman for his stats. We miss you, Joe Goldstein. We're thinking about you every single day, and we're sending positive energy your way. So that's the show. I call Saturday night's match played in the rain with threats of showers, mind you, a 2-1 win for New York. Thanks so much for watching episode 585. We'll be back next week with, hopefully, a guest host and me without my glasses. Have a good night, everyone. Bye-bye.